The somatic reflex is dealing with something like, even though it says soma meaning body, the skeletal muscles. So when we have a reflex, we're going to say that we have an arc. Now, what does that mean? First of all, we got to have a receptor. The receptors could be in the skin, in the muscles, or in the tendons. We need an afferent nerve fiber, carry it in to the central nervous system. Sometimes we need an integrating center. Note my terminology, sometimes. Okay? This would be within the spinal cord, a little interneuron. And then we need the efferent nerve fiber, meaning carry the response out, and something that it affects, an effector. For example, if we look at the knee-jerk reflex, in the knee-jerk reflex, rather simple, okay? Come along with the little hammer, you get hit on the tendon, all right? This is going to activate some little sensory cells. Basically, when they get activated, they're going to send their response, their impulse, into the spinal cord. On this particular reflex, there is no interneuron. The sensory neuron synapses directly on the motor neuron, which innervates muscles that make you kick. The arc that we talk about, receptors, afferent, synapse, efferent, effector. Is everybody kind of following me?
You said no interneuron.
There is no interneuron. And the arc is just simply in, out. This is a very simple reflex. This is a reflex that'll get registered at the level of the spinal cord, and you get your response. The brain barely has to pay any attention to it whatsoever. You'll know something happened, but the response didn't come from the brain. The response came from the level of the spinal cord. All right? This is the simplest. What we found, okay, remember I said that there were specialized cells in that muscle, okay? Because we hit the tendon. The tendons are connected to the muscles, are they not? Okay? Tendons, they're kind of cool, okay? In the muscle, we're going to have some specialized cells. They're called a muscle spindle. It is just simply a specialized skeletal muscle cell. And think about a spindle, something that twirls, okay? Now, the other thing that we have to pay attention to in reflexes, okay, if you get that knee-jerk reflex, you're usually sitting down, all right? Legs are usually swinging back and forth, all right? Doctor comes up, all right? And you don't fall over, right? Because you're sitting down. The only thing that happens is, pow, foot goes out. Hopefully he's not standing in front of the foot, he or she. Okay, that's it, all right? Well, wait a minute. Is that the only type of reflex we're going to have? No. What other types of reflex can we have? Oh, la, da, 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 da. Outside, pretty sunny day, weather's great, and all of a sudden, Okay? Those bugs that try to hit you right in the eye. All right? But did I lose my balance? Because proprioceptors are going to help that. So when reflexes take place, even though our response comes from the level of the spinal cord, proprioceptors tell my brain, hey, something knocked me off balance. Don't let me fall over. My place in space. So that means, even though the reflex might be simple, we have some of those other parts of the brain involved that are going to help us keep our balance. And basically, they're going to be the areas of the brain stem and the cerebellum that are going to help us to keep that coordinated balance and so forth. A little bit with the ears, okay? This is a muscle spindle. Like I said, twisty, okay? Specialized muscle cell, helping to pass information about your place in space. Oh, I didn't mean to leave that one in there, because I'm not going to ask you about those intrafusal muscle fibers or the gamma motor neurons or anything like that. Proprioceptors are to help you keep your place in space. When we talk about reflexes, we have defined them. We have said this reflex does this one does that one does that. So, one of the reflexes we can have, a stretch reflex. Basically, when a muscle stretches, it's got to fight back. We can't overstretch muscle. If muscle stretches too far, it can tear, okay? It can be damaged. So muscle is going to say, no, I'm not going. That's it. It's going to say, I've got to make sure that it doesn't overstretch and be damaged. Good example. You're sitting in class, teacher's boring you to death. Huh? What? Huh? Oh. Okay? That's a stretch reflex. Basically, certain muscles have gotten stretched too far as your head begins to nod off and not have anything to lay against, and it pops it back into place.
Would an eye twitch? That's a reflex.
That's going to be a reflex, but that's going to be, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go back and look it up. Okay, the eye twitch is usually due to maybe it could be stressors. It could be sleep deprivation, and it could also be an improper balance of your ions. Yeah.
So I have friends who twitch more than most people, so that's why I was just.
A lot of times it's stress related.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, no, seriously, if y'all could see if y'all need my stressors right now, I can reach that high. All right, so the stretch reflex, the job basically makes sure we don't overstretch and that we keep, because see, one of the things that's going to happen, because we don't really study the deeper muscles of the body in 141 and 142, there are certain muscles that are going to help us maintain our posture, sitting, standing, walking, whatever the case might be. We have to make sure we don't overstretch those, okay? And then, for the case of like this one that we are definitely aware of, the knee jerk. Like I said, very simple. One synapse, sensory to the motor and back out. But they're very beneficial. In the health field, they can help diagnose certain problems that could be with the nervous system or the muscular system, for example. So they're very clinically important. Now, what'll happen is when the knee-jerk reaction is done, we have what's termed reciprocal inhibition. When muscles work, they always work in groups. You will have a group of muscles that will be contracting and a group that will be relaxing for every movement that is made. So in a reflex, the same thing happens. A group of muscles will be contracting while a group is relaxing. So they are reciprocal. The knee jerk. Because in the knee jerk, basically what's going to happen is, I can't remember if there's the picture. Yeah, this one right here. Note that we're going to have sensory information go in from the quads, but the motor comes from the hams, comes to the hams. So you've got the two groups that have got to work together. One's got to contract while the other relaxes. Okay? And this is true for every movement you make. Every movement you make, there's going to be a group of muscles that contract and a group that relaxes, which is kind of cool. And this, of course, very simple. Now, there's something else showing up in this picture. Do what?
Oh, it's fine.
Okay, yeah, our little ganglion's there. But do you see anything different this time in the spinal cord? Before, I had where it just simply showed sensory meeting motor and coming back out. Now it's showing you what can happen if we involve an interneuron. This time it's kind of showing the representation of information coming in, synapsing on something here, the interneuron and the spinal cord, to the motor that goes back out. Now, here's what that interneuron helps with. The interneuron helps to send information up the spinal cord and helps to register that information, a lot of it, about my place in space, so I don't fall over. Does that make sense? The little simple one, where we just basically have sensory to motor, that's just dealing with making sure my knee jerks out. The information sensory to enter to motor, interneurons helping to register my place in space. Now, another type of reflex that we can have, the withdrawal reflex. Now, when this reflex takes place, what needs to happen, we need to make sure that as the sensory information goes in, gets registered, we get the response out, that we're going to be able to have our coordinated body functions to not fall over and just, end up on the ground. So, what do you notice about all of that up there on that section of the spinal cord? Look a little more complicated? It's still a reflex, okay? All right, but now wait a minute. The last one I showed, it was only operating on one side. Basically all we needed, because either my left or my right knee was getting hit. But this time, what's happening?
It's affecting
Both sides. I got to deal with why. I got to balance. I got to balance. So if I'm walking along and that stimulus is right here and I step on it with my right foot, I got to make sure that with my left, when I jerk away from it, that I'm balanced on both sides. So I'm now involving both sides of my spinal cord. Because that thought that we have about right versus left, okay? Right controls the left, left controls the right, okay? That sort of thing. Like I said, yes and no. Okay? But in this case, yes. Crossed extension, this is where I am allowing for the muscles, okay, of the contraction, the ones that are going to need to contract, ones that are going to need to relax, okay? Some of the information will be ipsilateral. It'll stay on one side of the body. Some of it will cross the contra. So it allows for that balance to take place. It involves more than one segment of the spinal cord. Anything that was easy, like that knee jerk, it only requires one segment. For us to maintain the balance, to cross over,